He built his empire with her hands, then erased her with one sentence. Everyone believed his version. No one heard hers. But the woman he called outdated was about to become the reason his perfect world collapsed, and the truth he tried to bury would be the thing that destroyed him. 10 years of her life vanished in one sentence. Not a fight, not a scandal. One calm, polished sentence spoken by the man she helped build into a billionaire. You're outdated. That was what Julian Cross said to her in a glass boardroom overlooking the bay, the same room she once slept under a desk in when his servers crashed at 3 a.m. Outdated, like a phone you throw away, like a chair you stop sitting on, like a woman whose usefulness has expired. Her name was Mara Klein, and before that moment, she believed she was living a love story. She met Julian when he had nothing but a broken laptop, a rented desk, and a dream so fragile it shook when he spoke it out loud. He said he wanted to build a logistics tech company that would change global shipping forever. He said he just needed someone who believed in him. Mara believed harder than anyone ever would again. She wrote his first code. She built the system that made investors think his company was already 10 times bigger than it was. She negotiated early deals while he practiced sounding like a CEO in the mirror. When things broke, she fixed them. When he doubted himself, she carried his confidence for both of them. People saw Julian as the genius. They never saw the woman who made the genius possible. Years passed. The company grew. Offices turned from rented rooms into glass towers. Julian started wearing tailored suits. Mara kept wearing hoodies and exhaustion. She did not mind. She thought they were building something together. Then one morning, he asked her to come into the boardroom. She thought it was about expansion. She had just finished designing a security upgrade that could change everything. He did not let her sit. He stood at the head of the table like a stranger wearing her lover's face. "We're moving in a new direction," he said. "And you don't fit that direction anymore." She laughed because it sounded like a joke that forgot to be funny. "I built that direction," she said quietly. He smiled the way men do when they have already decided you no longer count. "You were useful once," he said. "Now you're old equipment." Old equipment. In one breath, he erased years of nights, years of sacrifice, years of being invisible so he could be seen. By the end of the week, her access was gone. Her name vanished from internal records. Her code was reassigned. Publicly, Julian told the story of a visionary who had outgrown his early partners. Privately, he replaced her with a young influencer who posted smiling photos from the office and called herself the future. Mara packed her life into one small box. No speeches, no apologies, just a quiet walk out of the building she helped imagine into existence. The world watched Julian rise. No one watched her fall. And here is what haunts me about this story. He didn't just fire her, he rewrote her. He said she couldn't keep up. He said she was afraid of change. He said she was no longer relevant. After using her mind, her loyalty, her silence, he turned her into the problem. I've always been obsessed with one question. What does a person do after being erased by the one they helped build? Because betrayal from a stranger hurts. But betrayal from the person you built with changes the shape of your soul. Have you ever given someone your best years and then watched them pretend you were never there? Have you ever had your own life rewritten in someone else's voice? That's what happened to Mara, and that is why I couldn't let this story go. Welcome to Untold Journey Stories. And tonight, I want to walk with you through a story about betrayal, dignity, and what happens when a woman refuses to let a lie be the last thing written about her. But before we go any further, if you believe stories can heal, warn, and awaken something inside us, take 1 second to subscribe to this channel. Your support is what keeps these journeys alive. Because this is not a story about crying in the dark. This is not a story about begging for closure. This is a story about becoming untouchable. When Mara walked out of that building, she did not know she was walking into the most dangerous phase of her life. Not because she was weak, but because she was about to remember who she was. She went home and sat in silence. Not dramatic, not broken, just empty. The world believed Julian's version of her. Investors praised his bold decision. Strangers online said he did what he had to do. And some nights, she almost believed them too. Maybe she really was invisible without him. Maybe her value only existed inside his story. But then she asked herself something that changed everything. If I was so useless, why did he work so hard to erase me? Men don't erase things that don't matter. They erase witnesses. That question cracked the story he built. She opened her old files, her old code, her old notebooks full of ideas Julian never even read. She began to see what he never wanted anyone to notice. She had not been weak. She had been dangerous. And dangerous women are always described as broken. The world thought Mara Klein was finished, but what the world didn't know was that this was not her ending. This was the moment she started writing her name again. When a person is erased, the silence that follows is louder than any insult. Mara did not collapse the day she left that building. She collapsed slowly in the quiet hours when no one was watching. The world had already chosen a story for her, and she had to wake up inside it every morning. Julian's version of events traveled faster than she ever could. He called her a phase, a starting piece, someone who couldn't evolve. Articles praised his courage. Investors applauded his vision. And everywhere she went, people looked at her like she was a reminder of something they did not want to think about. Failure, not dramatic failure, the soft kind, the kind people pretend not to see. Some friends tried to comfort her with sentences that felt like gentle erasers. At least you're free now. Everything happens for a reason. You'll find something else. Free felt like exile. Reason felt like a lie. Something else felt like nothing. At night, she lay awake asking herself questions she never wanted to ask. Was I only valuable when someone else needed me? Was I always meant to disappear quietly? Did I mistake being useful for being loved? This is what betrayal really does. It does not just break your heart. It makes you doubt your reality. Julian had always been good at that. When she wanted to speak at conferences, he said she wasn't public enough. When she wanted to lead her own team, he laughed and said she was better behind the scenes. When she talked about her own future, he said, "Our future is what matters." Slowly, she had learned to make herself smaller so he could look bigger. So when the world agreed with him, the doubt sank deep. But pain has a strange way of waking you up. One night, sitting on the floor of her apartment with her laptop open and no idea what she was supposed to do with her life, she started reading her old work. Code she had written years ago. Systems she had designed alone. Plans he had taken credit for. And she saw something that changed everything. Her work was not outdated. Her thinking was not slow. Her mind had not stopped. The only thing that had changed was who was telling the story. That was when she asked herself a question that split the lie in half. If I was so replaceable, why did he work so hard to erase me? People do not erase things that don't matter. They erase threats. Once she saw that, the shame loosened its grip. She stopped trying to explain herself to people who had already chosen a side. She stopped trying to look healed. She started looking honest. She took small freelance projects under a different name, not to hide, but to breathe. She helped struggling startups fix systems that louder men had broken. She worked quietly, rebuilding her confidence with results instead of applause. Every problem she solved reminded her of something important. She had never disappeared. She had just been hidden, and hidden things can still grow. The world still thought she was finished. That was the best part, because when people stop watching you, you get to become something new without interference. Then one evening, after a small tech forum where she had been invited to speak on a panel about failed founders, a man approached her who did not introduce himself like he wanted to be admired. His name was Daniel Mercer. He listened more than he talked. His eyes were calm in a way that told you he had seen many people fall and did not need to stand near them to feel powerful. He said one sentence that stayed with her. People who are quietly pushed out usually know exactly how systems are built. She answered without thinking. And how they break. He did not smile. He nodded. They talked about business, about power, about how confidence, when performed loudly enough, becomes its own disguise. He did not promise to save her. He did not offer pity. He offered access to data, to structures, to truth. And Mara realized she did not want revenge. She wanted authorship. She wanted her life back. Together, they began to look closely at Julian's empire. Not with anger, but with attention. And attention is dangerous. They found numbers that were too clean. growth that moved too smoothly, reports that had been edited without explanation. This was not a mistake. This was design. Julian had not just erased her, he had replaced truth with performance. Mara did not feel excited. She felt steady. This was not about hurting him. This was about ending a lie. But doubt still came sometimes. Late at night, she wondered if proving he was a fraud would also erase the last proof that she had ever mattered to him. Because betrayal is complicated. You do not just lose a person, you lose the meaning you gave your sacrifice. If he was cruel, what did that make all the love she gave him? So she let herself grieve, not loudly, not for an audience, but honestly. She grieved the woman who thought loyalty was safety. She grieved the years she mistook silence for strength. She grieved the girl who believed love meant becoming smaller. And then she stopped grieving. By the time the evidence was complete, she was no longer the woman who had been erased. She was someone who knew exactly who she was, even if the world had forgotten for a while. And that is the most dangerous kind of person. Not the angry one, not the loud one, the one who understands herself so clearly that no lie can replace her again. When you finally know who you are, the world stops feeling like a judge and starts feeling like a map. Mara moved differently now. Not fast, not loud, not desperate to be seen. She moved like someone who knew exactly where she was going, even if no one else could see the path yet. Working with Daniel was not romantic. It was precise. Two minds sitting across from each other in quiet rooms, tracing patterns no one else bothered to notice. He never told her what to think. He asked how she saw things. That difference mattered more than he probably knew. She rebuilt herself the way people rebuild after something sacred breaks, carefully, with intention, without apology. She studied new systems, new security models, new compliance laws, not because she was chasing relevance, but because she was claiming mastery. Every skill she sharpened felt like stitching herself back together, not as the woman Julian erased, but as the woman he never fully understood. She began to see how his company truly worked, not as a miracle, not as genius, but as a performance. Everything was designed to look unstoppable. Numbers were smooth, losses were hidden, confidence was treated like proof. Julian did not build stability. He built belief. And belief, when strong enough, keeps people from looking too closely. Daniel once said, "There are men who want to be admired and men who want to be unchallenged. The first need applause. The second needs silence." Julian needed silence. Mara had been his silence for years. Now she was his echo. She did not feel rage as she uncovered lie after lie. She felt clarity, the kind that makes your spine straighten, the kind that removes fear without replacing it with hate. Because this was not revenge. This was authorship. She was taking back the pen. And something else was changing too. She noticed that Daniel never tried to stand in front of her. He stood beside her. He never softened her sharpness. He respected it. He never asked her to be less so he could be more. That kind of respect does something dangerous to a woman who has spent years shrinking. It reminds her how big she really is. Some nights they worked till the city outside his windows fell into reflection instead of light. No music, no speeches, just quiet focus. And sometimes in that quiet, Mara felt something she had not felt in a long time. Safety without control, support without ownership. One night she said, "Do you know why he replaced me?" Daniel did not answer immediately. Then he said, "Because you knew who he was before he knew who he wanted to be." That truth settled in her chest like something final. Julian was no longer the center of her story. He was a chapter she had already closed. When the evidence was complete, they did not celebrate. They prepared. Timing is power. Julian was about to announce a massive international expansion. Press, investors, influencers, all watching. The kind of stage he loved most. Daniel made sure the right people saw the truth before Julian had a chance to rewrite it. Regulators, auditors, authorities who did not care how charming a man sounded when he spoke about vision. Mara attended the event not as an enemy, as a witness. Julian stood on stage, smiling like a man who believed applause meant safety. He spoke about growth, innovation, the future. Behind him, the lie was already cracking. The questions began softly. Then they sharpened. Numbers that didn't match. Transactions without explanation. Reports that didn't agree with themselves. Julian tried to smile through it. He always believed charm could outrun consequence. But consequence does not listen to charm. When officials asked him to step aside, the room fell silent. The man who erased her was now being questioned in front of everyone who believed him. Mara did not look away. She did not feel triumph. She felt distance, like watching a storm you are no longer standing in. She stood, turned, and walked out before anyone could say her name. Not because she was afraid, because she was done. Outside, the air was cold and clean. She breathed it like someone who had been underwater too long. Daniel joined her. "It's over," he said. She looked at the city, then at her hands. "No," she said softly. "Now it's mine." That was when she understood what real power is. Not destroying someone else. Not humiliating them. Not standing on their ruins. Real power is becoming someone they can never control again. And she had. The world would soon learn her name again. Not as someone's shadow, not as someone's mistake, but as a woman who wrote her own ending, quietly and without asking permission. When a lie begins to fall apart, it doesn't scream, it hesitates. At first, people said Julian's company was reviewing its numbers. Then they said partners were reconsidering relationships. Then regulators confirmed what everyone already felt in their bones. Something was wrong. What fascinated me wasn't how fast he fell. It was how fast people pretended they had always doubted him. The same voices that once called him visionary now said, "I never trusted him." The same rooms that once applauded him now went quiet when his name came up. Crowds don't follow truth, they follow safety. Julian tried to outrun the truth the only way he knew how, with speeches, with charm, with the same confident voice that once made people stop asking questions. But this time, he wasn't rewriting someone else's story. He was trying to save his own. Mara didn't chase the news. She didn't sit in front of screens waiting to see him fall. Her life was finally moving forward, and she refused to tie it to his collapse. But he found her anyway. One evening, he appeared outside Daniel's office, thinner, sharper, his confidence now brittle instead of bright. When he saw her, his face twisted into something that looked like anger but felt more like panic. "You planned this," he said. She looked at him the way you look at a place you used to live in, with memory but no belonging. "No," she said quietly. "I told the truth. You were nothing without me," he snapped. And for the first time, she didn't feel the urge to defend herself. "You were nothing without me too," she said calmly. "The difference is, I never pretended otherwise." That was when I understood what really hurt him. Not the investigation, not the money, not the public doubt. What broke him was losing control over her. Control had always been his real power, and now he had none. He walked away without another word. And she knew that chapter was closed forever. The investigation moved quickly after that. Funds were frozen, executives were questioned, deals collapsed overnight. The influencer who once stood beside him vanished like smoke. Cameras that once loved him now waited for his mistakes. And he made many. Mara didn't go to the hearings. She didn't need to see him punished to feel free. Freedom is quieter than revenge. Around the same time, Daniel offered her something that had nothing to do with pity. Chief Strategy Officer. Not because she had been wronged, not because she had survived, because she was exceptional. She accepted without trembling, not with gratitude, but with certainty. She walked into that office not as someone rescued, but as someone who had reclaimed herself. Working beside Daniel felt nothing like working with Julian. There was no shrinking, no silence forced by fear, no need to disappear so someone else could shine. She spoke, she led, she decided, and slowly people began to say her name differently, not as his former partner, not as the woman he replaced, but as a mind that moved decisions, a presence that changed outcomes. Julian, meanwhile, became a warning. Charges followed him. His company dissolved under the weight of truth. He tried once in an interview to talk about betrayal. No one listened, because stories lose power when the truth has already spoken. One night, sitting on a balcony above a city that finally felt like hers, Mara said something that stayed with me. "I don't feel victorious." Daniel looked at her. "That's because victory is about them. Peace is about you." She leaned into the wind and closed her eyes. She wasn't celebrating. She wasn't chasing closure. She was returning to herself. And that, I've learned, is the real ending most of us want. Not to win, not to destroy, but to wake up one morning and realize the person who once broke us no longer has a single line in our thoughts. Mara didn't defeat Julian. She outgrew him, and that is why this part of the story matters most to me, because it teaches something dangerous in the best way. That revenge doesn't heal you. Truth doesn't always need a stage, and the strongest freedom is not being seen. It's being untouched by what once owned you. When a person finally outgrows pain, life does not get louder. It gets clearer. Mara's days no longer revolved around proving anything. There was no audience she needed to impress, no ghost she needed to defeat. Her work with Daniel grew into something steady and real, not built on drama but on intention. She became Chief Strategy Officer, not as a title to wear, but as a space to shape. She helped rebuild companies that had collapsed under greed. She redesigned systems so success would not require someone else's silence. She taught leaders that growth without integrity is just a slower kind of collapse. And quietly, her name began to mean something new. Not the woman who was erased, not the one who exposed him, but the one who knows how to build what lasts. People started asking her how she survived betrayal. She never gave them a dramatic answer. "I didn't survive it," she said. "I outgrew it." That sentence came from somewhere deep. From the years she had spent shrinking. From the nights she had spent doubting her own reality. From the moment she realized that healing is not about revenge, but about reclaiming authorship of your own life. She began mentoring young women in tech who had been told they were too quiet, too serious, not marketable enough. She showed them how power does not come from being loud, but from being solid. She taught them how loyalty without dignity becomes self-erasure, how love that requires you to disappear is not love at all. One afternoon, after a long meeting that changed the future of a struggling company, she walked alone through the city. She passed people who had no idea who she was, and for the first time, that felt like freedom. She was not famous, she was not performing. She was simply real. That night, sitting across from Daniel in a quiet restaurant, she said something she had never said out loud before. "I used to think my life ended when he left." Daniel looked at her carefully. "And now? Now I know it started when I did." He didn't argue. He didn't try to make it poetic. He just nodded, like someone who understood that some truths do not need decoration. What grew between them was not a rescue story. It was not built on wounds. It was built on recognition. Two people seeing each other clearly and choosing not to compete, not to shrink, not to dominate. She did not need him to feel whole. She wanted him because she already was. That is the difference between love and survival. Sometimes she still thought about Julian, not with pain, not with anger, more like remembering a city you once lived in but no longer belonged to, a place that shaped you but cannot hold you anymore. He became a footnote in the story he once tried to own. And that, I think, is the quiet justice of life. Not that the wrongdoer always suffers loudly, but that the one who was hurt learns how to live freely. Mara's life did not become perfect. She still failed sometimes. She still doubted herself on hard days. She still had moments where old echoes tried to return. But now she knew how to answer them. She answered them with action, with truth, with the steady voice inside her that no longer needed permission. Watching her journey taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn. That betrayal does not define you. That loss does not end you. That being erased does not make you invisible. It only gives you the chance to write your name again, in your own hand, with your own power, in a story no one else gets to control. And if you are listening to this while carrying your own quiet hurt, your own unspoken betrayal, your own erased chapter, remember this: you are not late. You are not broken. You are not finished. You are in the part of the story where you learn who you really are. The most powerful revenge is not destruction. It is self-respect. And the strongest ending is not applause. It is freedom. Some stories stay with us not because of what happened, but because of what they reveal about us. Mara's journey is not really about a man who betrayed her or a company that collapsed. It is about what happens when a person is forced to face the most dangerous question of all. Who am I when no one is choosing me anymore? She lost more than a job. She lost the story she had been living in. And when that story was taken from her, she had to decide whether she would disappear with it or write a new one herself. That is what makes her story powerful. She did not heal by being saved. She did not heal by being admired. She healed by becoming honest with herself. She learned that loyalty without dignity slowly destroys you. That silence can look like love until it becomes a cage. That shrinking for someone else is not sacrifice, it is self-erasure. And the most important truth she discovered was this: betrayal only has power over you as long as you let it define who you are. The moment she stopped trying to be understood by the people who erased her and started understanding herself, her life changed direction. This is not just her story. It is the story of anyone who has ever been made to feel replaceable, anyone who has ever been told they were too much or not enough, anyone who has ever stayed quiet so someone else could feel big. The lesson is not to become cold. The lesson is not to seek revenge. The lesson is to become rooted. When you know who you are, lies lose their power. When you respect yourself, manipulation has nowhere to land. When you stop shrinking, the right people no longer feel threatened by your size. So how do you apply this to your life? You start by listening to the voice inside you that you have been ignoring. You stop explaining your worth to people who benefit from doubting it. You choose relationships where you do not have to disappear to be loved. You build skills, character, and self-trust so your life is not dependent on anyone else's approval. And when someone walks away from you, remember this: sometimes they are not rejecting you. They are escaping the version of you they can no longer control. If this story made you think, I would love to hear from you. Here is a simple question for you. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you realized you were becoming smaller for someone else? Please leave your answer in the comments so we can all learn from each other's experiences. And if you enjoy stories that heal, challenge, and inspire, please subscribe to Untold Journey Stories to support the channel and help us keep creating meaningful journeys like this one.